The sun leaned west, yet the heat refused to loosen its grip. It pressed down, flat and patient, across the mesquite flats, softening distance until the land itself felt uncertain, as though the world were holding something back and had not yet decided whether to release it. The river moved on their right, brown-green and unhurried, sliding away from the bowl and out across the flats toward land that never seemed to end. From out here, it felt strange. Water, leaving the safety of stone and choosing the wide, uncertain world. Tick-Tick walked without favoring the injury, though the river rock still lived in his shin. Not broken, not crippling, just a line of heat that reminded him when he pushed too hard or planted his weight without thinking. He adjusted around it without announcing it. The change lived in small things, in how he placed the foot, in how he chose firmer ground when it offered itself, in how he kept his pace steady, so pain never got to decide the rhythm. Izel's right shoulder carried its own quiet protest. The club rested lower than usual along her side, and when she tested its balance, a faint tremor passed through her forearm before she stilled it, swallowing the discomfort without ceremony. She did not baby the arm. She did not pretend it was fine. She simply moved as if the world would not care either way, because it wouldn't. He'd checked his kit when they left the water. Waxed pouch, rope coil, the little things that couldn't afford to stay wet, dry enough, good enough. Neither spoke of it. They had been out long enough that the first confidence had burned off. That early, clean feeling of, we know this ground, had faded into the simpler, older truth. You never know a place like this. You only survive it for a while. Ahead, lazy tree necks shifted through the dry scrub, their long shadows swaying with the rhythm of their necks. Nearer the river, a cluster of spike-tails grazed with plates, catching the light like worn shields. Tails lifting now and then in slow half-threats at flies and at nothing. Far above, sky knives rode the heat, cutting lazy circles that looked effortless, until you remembered how fast those wings could turn into a blade. The world wore the face of an ordinary afternoon. That was warning enough.
You see it?
Izel asked quietly, eyes forward.
Not yet.
Tick-Tick replied. She tipped her chin toward a narrow game trail, cutting away from the bank, and they angled toward it without breaking stride. The trail was an old habit line in the land, a thin strip of pressed grass where hooves and feet had gone the same way too many times. Hoof prints layered the ground, old, new, half erased by wind and sun. The fresher cuts still holding shape, while the older ones had begun to crumble at their edges, as though time itself had pressed a thumb against them. Tick-Tick let his eyes go soft, taking in the whole surface rather than chasing details too greedily. His posture stayed loose, casual to look at, but his mind was all angles and small maths, the same way rivermen thought in nets. Not in straight lines, but in where a thing would choose to go when it believed it was free. Then he noticed the insects, not gone, simply reduced, as though the air had been told to mind its manners. In the dry months, insects were often the first alarm, not because they were afraid, because they were alive, and alive things listened. He did not stop immediately. He let the quiet sit in his senses first, the way you let smoke settle before deciding where the fire is. Only then did he crouch, press 2 fingers to the damp soil at the edge of a hoofprint, and rub the grit lightly between thumb and forefinger.
Morning pass,
he murmured.
not ours.
Izel looked past him, scanning the brush line rather than the print.
Game?
Game.
He said, then added, quieter.
And something else.
They followed. The wind shifted, a dry hiss moving through grass that had been still only moments before, and Tick-Tick felt the temperature change against the sweat at his neck, the subtle way heat turns when something large has recently moved through it. Then the boot print. He let it sit in his vision first, allowing his eyes to take it in without reacting, as though he were passing over nothing more than another mark in the dust. Deep heel, light toe, running. Not blind panic, urgency. He crouched again, closer now, and studied the overlap where several stride patterns crossed the trail. The ground told a story if you didn't rush it, and if you didn't lie to yourself about what you wanted it to say.
4.
He said at last. Isel's gaze sharpened.
How sure?
Tick-Tick's fingers traced the scuffs without touching too hard.
4 distinct rhythms. 2 clean, 1 sloppy, 1 heavy.
Heavy how?
Built broader,
He said.
or carrying.
Izel's jaw tightened slightly. Not fear, not yet, but the quiet annoyance of a healer who knew how fast something small became something bleeding.
Disciplined.
She said.
Yes,
Tick-Tick agreed.
at first.
They followed the line of disturbance deeper into the scrub. The stride lengthened. Toe scuffs began to appear where footing had slipped. One boot dragged briefly, then corrected. The rhythm broke again, then tried to repair itself. Whoever they were, they had been moving with purpose. And then something had made the purpose ugly. Tick-Tick slowed with it, not for drama, for information. Fast feet missed details, slow feet collected them. A strip of grey cloth snagged on thorn. Weather-oiled, double-stitched hem. Tick-Tick rolled it between thumb and forefinger, studying the weave more than the colour. It was not ash-forge cloth. Ash-forge didn't waste good stitching on the edges of things that were meant to tear. Ash-forge stitched for function. This was stitched for pride.
Trader die.
Isel said, reading the stain and the thread without touching.
Raider gut.
Tick-Tick replied. He rubbed at the stencil until the paint split slightly, revealing the hurry in the hand that had marked it, a rushed line, a wobble, a man who cared more about leaving than looking proper.
They left fast.
He said.
They didn't plan to.
Izel answered. They kept moving, not because curiosity dragged them forward, but because the trail was already laid, and in a world like this, unasked questions had teeth. The smell reached them before the sight. Metal beneath dry heat. Blood carried thin on the air. And then suddenly, even the flies were scarce. Not absent, but keeping their distance, as though whatever had happened here still owned the space and the air around it. The body lay half in brush, adult, leather intact, knife still sheathed. It was not a man who had died fighting. It was a man who had died too quickly for the world to grant him a proper choice. His head was wrong, compressed inward as though stone itself had closed its jaws around bone. No tearing, no feeding, just removal. Izel exhaled once. Not grief, inventory. The kind of breath you took when the world handed you a fact you didn't ask for.
Clean.
She said.
Close.
Tick-Tick replied. He did not look at the face. He looked at the ground. Heavy forepaw impressions pressed deep into the soil, shoulder weight driven forward with commitment, rear pads tight and aligned. The spacing was wrong for a sickle claw, wrong for a mauler, wrong for anything that moved like a lizard. This was a cat, a long fang. The tracks did not widen into a hunt arc. They did not spiral out and back in like a clever circle. They drove straight, then looped tight, then drove again, like anger-given legs. They pointed toward stone, toward a broken shelf, where the earth rose slightly, and the shade under it was thicker than it should be. Den. Near the entrance, smaller impressions marked the dust. Wide, unsteady, uncertain, cub. Izel leaned a fraction closer, just enough for her shadow to cross the edge of the hollow. For half a breath, she thought the small shape shifted in the shade, and her chest tightened. Then she saw the rib cage did not rise. Still, too still, ribs pressed inward, neck bent, not eaten, crushed, caught between chaos and fear, and paid for someone else's mistake. The adult's tracks looped tight around the entrance, claw gouges scoring the rock with restless force. The marks were deep enough to tell you the cat had stood here after, not leaving, pacing, coming back again and again. A mother's anger wearing grooves into stone.
Wrong ground.
Izel whispered. Tick-Tick nodded once. He did not move closer. He did not step into the den mouth. He did not give the world the satisfaction of catching him doing something sentimental. He stood where he could see the open, where he could run if he had to, and he listened. The wind shifted again. A low chuff rolled from brush behind them, not a roar, not a challenge, but assessment, close enough to make the back of Tick-Tick's neck tighten. Not fear, readiness, the body's old agreement with survival. They did not turn sharply. A shoulder slid through mesquite, striped gold and shadow, broad skull. Long curved fangs pale as old bone. The furious long fang. It stepped forward once, measured, claiming, and lowered its head slightly, as if weighing the distance between them and the den, and deciding whether they were another problem to solve. Tick-Tick did not cock the crossbow. That tick would draw a line the world would not erase. And worse, it would announce them to everything else listening in the flats.
Easy,
he murmured. Izel shifted her club to her left hand, not because it was better, but because she could swing without betraying the shoulder. Her right arm stayed near her body. The motion was small. The message was not. They stepped back together, slow and balanced, not turning away, not presenting their spines like prey, not challenging like fools. The long fang lowered its head further. Then it slid sideways into the brush. Not gone, relocated. Silence settled in behind it, thick as felt. A long quiet followed, and the wind was the only thing brave enough to move. Isel swallowed.
Gone.
Tick-tick watched the space where it had been, eyes half-lidded, listening for what wasn't there.
No,
He said. He shifted his weight slightly. His shin tightened in protest. The long fang noticed. A twig snapped to their left. Not close, but closer than it had been. And the brush parted just enough for one eye to catch light again. It had circled. Only pieces showed themselves. Shoulder, tail tip, a flash of pale fang. The rest withheld on purpose. Tick-Tick's mind clicked through simple options, clean as a tool laid out on cloth. Don't run. Don't climb. Don't tick the bow. Keep lines clear. Find heavier ground. Find something that made the cat hesitate. He didn't say any of it. He just did the first part. He angled his feet, not away, but toward the river path, toward open sight lines and firmer footing. Mud told truth. Dry dust lied. Isel mirrored him without needing instruction. Silence stretched until it felt like a mistake. Then it struck, not from the front, from the blind side. Mass and muscle and heat in a single violent line. Tick-Tick moved before thought could fully form. His hand did not go to the bow. The bow was loud and slow at this range, and his shin would not forgive a hurried stance. Instead, his hand slid behind his hip, fingers finding the small leather pouch tied there, leather warm from his own body, the knot familiar as a tooth in the tongue, thumb hooking the seam without looking. Ash, fine as flour, lived in that pouch most days, a river tribe's habit, used to dry a grip, dull a scent, mark a line, keep hands from slipping when water decided to steal you. Today it became fire. He did not throw at the cat, he threw at the air. He tore the pouch open and flung the contents into the space the long fang was already committed to crossing. Red dust burst into the heat like spilled flame. The long fang hit it full in the face. Eyes, nose, mouth, and the world turned to pain. A violent snarl tore the stillness apart as it twisted mid-leap, claws ripping soil while momentum carried it past them. Its jaws snapped blindly, too late to find anything but wound, and the roar that followed carried rage, not retreat. It landed hard, skidding 3 strides before wheeling away, head shaking violently, breath coming harsh and ragged. It sneezed, a brutal, wet blast, then coughed and chuffed and hated them for the new sting. Tick-Tick did not chase the opening. He used it. They moved, controlled, quick, angling toward heavier ground, where footing was firmer and lines of sight wider. Isel didn't run in a straight line. She moved like someone who knew straight lines were where teeth caught you. Tick, tick, kept his pace steady, forcing the shin to obey, because limping was a bell you rang for predators. Behind them, brush shifted. The long fang paced parallel, glimpses only, tail, shadow, breath, never fully seen, never fully gone. It wasn't trying to kill them in one rush now. It was trying to make them make a mistake. They cut toward a loose herd of spiketails, grazing near a shallow cut in the earth. 4 heavy tails lifted at once, plates angling toward movement, heads turning with slow, offended authority. The long fang slowed. It did not want iron-hard plates added to its grief. It circled wider instead, keeping them in its eyes through gaps in mesquite, moving with that cat logic that said, "Let the world do the tiring for you." Sky knives shrieked overhead and lifted into the hot air, their voices slicing down through the tension, like a reminder that danger here never came from only one angle. Noise layered over fear, fear layered over heat, heat layered over fatigue, and still the long fang stayed with them, patient as the sun. Tick-Tick glanced once at Isil's shoulder, not a look of worry, a check, a calculation. He saw the way she held the club left now. He saw the slight stiffness around her neck. He saw the controlled breaths and the way she refused to let pain take up space in her face. She saw him look.
Still works,
She said. He nodded once.
Good.
That was all. They moved again, and the river drew closer to the cliffs ahead, its wandering run gathering itself as stone began to press it into a narrower path. The cliff face sharpened ahead. The first sign of the hot gates was shadow, a vertical seam where river and road vanished into rock. Still distant, still leaving open ground between here and there. And open ground was where cats liked to test you. The brush shifted once more, then stopped, then shifted again, closer. A chuff. Not a roar. Not yet. Just the sound of a throat deciding. Tick-Tick changed his line slightly, not looking back, not giving the cat the satisfaction of seeing his eyes. He moved them closer to the river's edge, where the bank was more honest underfoot. Mud told truth. Dry dust lied. Izel followed. A shape flickered between mesquite trunks. Not the whole animal. Never the whole animal. Just the shoulder again. The tail tip. A pale fang catching light for one blink, then gone. It stayed in the edge of their vision on purpose, pushing the mind, draining attention the way heat drained water. Tick-Tick's hand hovered near his belt again, but he did not reach. He had thrown the first. There might not be a second, and that was another lesson the land loved to teach. You only got so many tricks. Use them once. Use them well. Don't waste them on panic. Ahead, the shadow of the gates grew taller. The seam in the stone looked like a wound that never healed. River and road pressed together into a narrow throat, cliffs rising on either side like teeth. And still, between them and that throat, the cat paced. Isil kept her chin level, eyes forward, voice low enough to live under the wind.
It's not leaving.
No.
Tick-Tick agreed.
It thinks we belong to the dead.
A pause. Then she asked the question that mattered.
Do we look like raiders?
Tick-Tick did not answer at first. He watched the grass. He watched the river line. He watched the places the cat could leap from. Then...
To it? Yes.
Izal's jaw tightened.
Then it won't stop.
It will.
Tick-Tick said. And there was a thin edge to it now. Not anger, but certainty.
When something worse arrives.
The brush to their left trembled. The long fang shifted closer. Tick-Tick's hand rose, palm down. The signal for slow, for quiet, for don't make the world notice you. They moved as if they were not running from a cat. They moved as if they were simply walking home. It was the only insult that sometimes worked. The long fang made another probing rush. Not full commitment, just a fast, low surge that tested whether fear had loosened their discipline. It snapped at air and pulled away, frustrated, circling again. Tick-Tick did not throw his last dust. He did not swing his bow. He gave it nothing. And in that refusal, the cat's anger sharpened. It wanted a mistake. It wanted a scream. It wanted the satisfaction of watching prey become prey. It did not get it. They were close enough to the gates now that the cliff shadow cooled the air slightly, and the river noise changed. Water tightening as the channel narrowed, the sound deepening, the hiss turning heavier where current pressed against stone. The sound changed the moment the stone began to take them, river noise narrowing into a darker note, as if the world had tightened its mouth. Then something moved in the reeds ahead. Not the long fang. Different rhythm. Lower. Two shapes broke from the river grass, like thoughts becoming bodies. Feathered sickle claw riders, low, silent, watching. Their mounts moved with that unnerving unmotion that good riders and good animals shared, not rushing, not hesitating, simply arriving where they meant to be. Feathers ran along the mount's skulls and spines like rough manes. Their legs stayed clean scaled down to the toes, and the namesake claws curled high, kept off the ground, as if even stone wasn't worth touching with them. One rider's gaze flicked to mesquite. He saw it, a striped shoulder, half hidden, still watching. The sickle claw hissed softly, a thin warning that cut the air. The long fang froze. Two predators now, too many risks. It held their gaze one long breath. Then it stepped backward, slow and measured, not retreating like fear, retreating like calculation. And then it melted into shade, gone, not vanished, withdrawn. The rider looked at Tick-Tick. The words came simple, because out here nobody wasted breath on poetry.
Mother?
The rider asked. Tick-Tick nodded once.
Cub's dead.
The rider's jaw tightened.
Silhan Hoter.
Yes.
Tick-Tick said. Izel exhaled slowly. Not relief exactly. More like the body finally letting go of a held breath now that the world had changed shape. The riders fell in beside them without ceremony. Escort, quiet protection. The kind of help Ash Forge gave when it couldn't afford to lose its people far from the drums. Together, they moved toward the stone throat, while the river slid beside them, carrying its water out across the flats, while they followed the bank back toward the bowl. From here, Ash Forge could not be seen, only cliff, only the narrow cut, where river and road vanished into rock. The hot gates. Tick-Tick paused at the edge of the shadow and listened. No alarm drums. No sky beat. Good. The town still breathed in its slow rhythm. His shin pulsed once, as if reminding him that pain was also information. Izel flexed her shoulder. Functional, not perfect. They stepped into the shade. Behind them, somewhere in Mesquite Heat, a grieving Longfang watched the wind and memorized their scent. Not for today, perhaps, but for the next time foolish feet returned to wrong ground. Ahead, the river ran past the bowl, past nets, past ash, past drums that meant bodies and roofs and traps and survival. And between those two truths lay the thing Tick-Tick would remember, a lesson that had nothing to do with bravery and everything to do with the world's indifference. Skill keeps you breathing. It does not make the ground yours.